Unbelievable performance last night. The Dolphins trample the Jaguars just like everyone expected. The game unfolded just exactly. No, it didn't. Good morning. It's PFT Live. Peter King, Mike Florio. Peacock, hello if you're watching us live. Sirius XM 211. NBCSN on the re-air at 9 a.m. Eastern. Sky Sports, 7 o'clock UK and Ireland time. Week 3 preview, but Week 3 Thursday Night Football review. And it was a rewind for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was Fitzpatrick at his best, Peter. Equal parts passer and fullback. At one point last night, I think Joe Buck compared him to Larry Zonka, and that wasn't a stretch the way the guy was running the football. How shocked were you by what we saw from Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins last night?
You said it right at the top. I really think there are times when Ryan Fitzpatrick plays that you look at it and you say, this guy is a playoff quarterback. And there are other times where you say, oh, my God, Tua can't get ready fast enough. But I think, Mike, there's two big lessons out of this game last night. Number one, the Miami Dolphins saved their season. And that Miami Dolphins team can be a contender. Now, will they be that way every week? Does it help to play Jacksonville on a short week? Apparently. But, I think the one other thing to think about with that game last night is I kept thinking, now, haven't there started to be some noises that Gardner Minshew is the franchise quarterback and the Jaguars don't need a quarterback and they're fine with Minshew? And when he overthrew, I think it was, I'm trying to remember. He overthrew, I think, Chris Conley by about 8 yards when he was wide open, running into the end zone, wide open. And I just said, maybe we shouldn't be so fast to say that if the Jaguars are picking first, that they shouldn't take Trevor Lawrence. So, I don't know. Those are my two takeaways. And by the way, does Ryan Fitzpatrick have some fun playing football? I mean,
he's got some fun playing football.
He really
and he went to Harvard, if you haven't heard that.
Yeah,
he's now beaten the Jaguars on 6 different teams. Ryan Fitzpatrick is now beating the Jaguars. 6 different teams, 6 different uniforms. It's now easier to list the teams that Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't played for than the ones that he has played for. But he's back in that vibe that we saw a couple of years ago when Jameis Winston was suspended and he was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. And he does ride that wave. And it all works. And it works incredibly well until the moment that it doesn't. And that's the thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He will, from time to time, have the planets line up and everything works, and he's a playoff caliber quarterback. And when you buy in, that's when it happens. See, we're setting the stage for a Week 4 meltdown by Ryan Fitzpatrick by praising him this much. Because the moment we buy in is the moment that it goes off the rails. And I can't remember another quarterback who performs like that, where there are these huge swings, and just when you think he's finally got it all figured out, it goes in the other direction, which is just amazing to me. Here are some of his teammates, though, praising Ryan Fitzpatrick for a great performance that we saw on Thursday night against Jacksonville.
Fitz is out of his mind. He's 38 years old and still, playing this game like he's 23. But, to have him as, our leader and, you just see the fun that he has. And, after I scored my touchdown, we just came off the sideline, just started yelling and screaming and chest bumping. I mean, it's so fun to play with him. Whether it's those plays like you're talking about where, he refuses to slide and all that kind of stuff, or it's the fun that he has or the experience that he shows to the guys around him. Whatever it is, it's always great, playing with him.
Coming into a game, a Thursday night game like this, he's always just kind of laughing and joking, trying to make sure everybody is just honed in and just not too amped up, not too low. Just, hey, this is the game we played since we were little kids. Like, at the end of the day, this is the game we play, and this is what we're here for. We're here to ball out.
How he conducts the huddle, how he conducts his offense, really reflects on, how we can perform. I think it's like we did a good job tonight with it.
I've been making the argument recently, Peter. We've seen what Joe Burrow, the first overall pick in the draft, can do. So far, so good. We saw what Justin Herbert, the sixth overall pick in the draft, can do unexpectedly last weekend against Kansas City. So far, so good. Let's see what Tua Tagovailoa, the fifth overall pick of the Dolphins, can do. Throw him into the fray. Let's go. Let's see what he has. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is holding that off. There's no way you can flip from what we saw last night to Tua, because you can't keep that guy on the bench, because as of right now, the absolute best that Tua could do, if everything fell his way, would be to replicate what we saw from Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to watch, especially, Mike, over the next 2 weeks, okay? Because the Miami Dolphins have Seattle at home, and then they go to San Francisco. And again, San Francisco is about 55% of San Francisco right now because of all the injuries. But these are two really good, have good parts of a team. But I kind of am going to be fascinated by Seattle making that long trip and playing against a team that is competent offensively and woke up on defense last night. Especially because when you look at Seattle right now, Seattle's been gashed some. So that's not the impossible dream for Miami to give Seattle a really good game next week. And then, hey, the 49ers, we'll see. I don't know who's going to be on the field for them. But I definitely think you're right. You can't switch to Tua now.
And, the thing is, I said this yesterday, we're getting closer and closer to that point in the season that I call Correction Sunday, where we think we know, we think we understand, we think we have it all figured out, and then results happen that make us say, what the hell were we thinking? And last night's game was a warning shot in that regard. The desperation that the Dolphins had at 0-2, and the fact that they played the Patriots and the Bills pretty close, right? They didn't get blown off the field. They didn't get embarrassed. Maybe that should have told us that they were in a position to get a win. And this was one of those, you got to get your wins when you can. This is a win you got to get, because you may lose the next two. And 0-3 becomes 0-5, and then you got a real problem if you're the Miami Dolphins. Then it's last year all over again, where they had to dig out of that hole. And we know what this team's capable of, because they dug out of that hole last year. I guess that's the key. If they could get off to a little bit faster start this year and finish the way they did last year, and they've got that back-to-back games against the Jets, week 10, week 12, with a bye in between. That's a couple of wins. Check those off. This is a team that, with 7 playoff spots, this is a team that could make things interesting if they can play like they played last night.
You're right, Mike. And again, you don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole looking at the schedule, but look at the last month of the season. Kansas City, New England, Vegas, and at Buffalo. So that's... even if they're in good shape on their schedule with 4 games to go, even if they're, let's just say, 6-6 with 4 games to go, that is still going to be a Bataan death march to a playoff berth. So, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, Miami has got to be over 500 after they have that game against Cincinnati. I think, when is it? Yeah, early December. So those are the kind of things I think when you look at Miami long term, there can't be many more sacrificial games for Miami coming up this year.
And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of the realities of scheduling in the NFL, but when you now have 4 playoff spots that go to division winners and 3 that go to wild cards where you cross division lines, that spin of the wheel every year that gets you one division in its entirety in your own conference and one division in its entirety in the other conference. If you're an AFC East team this year and you have designs on getting a wild card berth and half your schedule is against the AFC West and the NFC West, that's an uphill climb for everybody. And this is one of the things that I think as we see how it shakes out a few years with this 7 teams per conference, there's going to be a focus on this idea of how fair is it to make half your schedule hinge on just whatever year it is for you to play all the teams of this division and all the teams of that division, because it does make it hard for the Dolphins, the Bills, the Patriots, the Jets. Whichever team doesn't win the division, they've got some tough games that get compared across division lines to see who gets those 3 wild card berths. Brian Flores, in year number 2 as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, doing what he can to turn around a franchise that has been more dysfunctional than not over the past 40 years or so. Here's Flores talking about how it's all starting to pay off given all the work that they've been putting in.
It's always important to, when you work hard for something and you see the fruits of that labor, like I just mentioned, it's a good thing. Hopefully it builds confidence, but we got to continue to work the way we've been working and continue to grow as a team, as a staff, and it feels good to win. That's it definitely feels good to win.
And here's the key, Peter, and I think this is a critical component for any of the coaches who come from the Bill Belichick tree, guys who have been with him for years, who go out on their own. They bring a different attitude. They bring a different requirement. It's zero fun, sir, as we heard in Remember the Titans, which came out 20 years ago, I think, yesterday. You have to win to get your guys to buy in. At some point, they have to see that this works. And if it doesn't work, they're eventually going to say, hey, look, I'm okay with zero fun, sir, if we win. But if we're still going to suck, I'd rather have fun while we suck. And that may be the difference between Matt Patricia in Detroit and Brian Flores in Miami. Once they start to see that it can pay off, then they say, okay, we get it. We understand. We can sign up for zero fun, sir.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike, but I also think that, Patricia has more of a track record. He's sort of on the edge of an abyss right now. Who knows whether he's even going to make it through this full season. Whereas Flores, I think the end of last year, having a better record than New England after Halloween, I think really buys him time and quite honestly, buys him credibility in his locker room. Because those guys last year, midway through the season, whatever they were, 0-7, midway through the season, those guys started to see that even though their record wasn't very good, they played some pretty darn good games. The game they played at Pittsburgh on Monday night, they had some good games last year. And so I guess the way I look at the Miami situation is their arrow is pointing definitely, maybe not this way, but at least this way a little bit. And, in Detroit, I don't know. I don't see much of a way out of this, especially if Matthew Stafford is not a 5,500-yard quarterback this year or something. I mean, he's going to have to really, really make that team score 30, 32 points a game down the stretch, in my opinion, for them to win because their defense just isn't good enough.
We know that Matthew Stafford is the best things the Lions have going for them. What's the best thing the Dolphins have going for them?
I think the fact that they see that what Brian Flores is doing is working and just keep doing it. Okay, even when you have some bad losses, even when you open up with a real clunker to the Patriots and score 11 points, against a team that's totally rebuilding its defense, basically, or it's at least, its linebacking core. And, don't go crazy when that happens, because when you're building something, it's going to take time. And the other thing I think they have that you can really hang your hat on is a trust in this system that Flores has put in, a trust in the personnel things that Chris Greer has done as general manager. And look, Mike, last year, early in the season, that locker room was very skeptical. After getting rid of Minka Fitzpatrick, after getting rid of Laramie Tunsil, after getting rid of Kenny Stills. But now you look at it and you say, hey, listen, we've got some good young players in those positions. And, you're starting to see him. And Gesicki is not a rookie or anything like that, but he's a really good young player, one of the best young tight ends in football. And those are the kind of people you start seeing on this team. And so you have a trust in the system and say, we're going to be okay.
You know, last year, Gardner Minshew was viewed as sort of a poor man's Baker Mayfield. Early this year, maybe Baker Mayfield is a poor man's Gardner Minshew. But last night it was rough for Gardner Minshew, Peter. As you mentioned earlier, the overthrow. I think part of the problem was every drop back he had someone in his face. I mean, if you're not going to give a guy any blocking whatsoever, it's kind of hard to run the offense. They've got something special in James Robinson, undrafted from Illinois State. He's got burst. He's got that factor. You can just tell he belongs. He delivers punishment. He keeps going. He holds onto the football. He can catch it. He can run it. He scored 2 touchdowns last night. He's got it. Without DJ Chark last night, who was ultimately scratched with chest and back injuries, that made it harder for Minshew. But, you know, Peter, look, I still believe in Minshew. I just think that he needs to play in a game where there aren't constantly guys from the front 7 everywhere he goes.
Well, I would agree, Mike, but, you know, and I hate to be Belichickian here, but it is what it is. You know, Russell Wilson survives with guys in his face. And again, I'm not comparing these two guys, but, you know, when you're a quarterback in the NFL, you've got to deal with what you have. And Russell Wilson deals with it fine. He got hit hard on 3 of his 5 touchdown releases on Sunday against the Patriots. And Gardner Minshew last night really struggled with pressure. Really struggled. On the rollout, he made a really bad read, and it should have been intercepted. There were just too many Dolphins around the ball. You know, so I guess I look at it and say, I like Minshew too. But too many performances like that last night, and, you know, all the jorts are going to disappear, and the orange Clemson jerseys are going to appear in the crowd with Trevor Lawrence's number on it.
I still think the Jaguars have a long way to go before they're in contention for Trevor Lawrence, because there are some pretty bad teams in the NFL right now. Because of the Jets and because of the Vikings. The Vikings are going to give the Jets a run for their money by the time it's all said. Have you watched the games? Have you
no,
watched
I
the
have
games,
not
Peter
yet.
King?
But no.
Okay.
But hey, listen, you know what Kirk Cousins is.
Trust me.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 380 this week. You know, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, because that's who he is. Yeah, you know, 1 week
he doesn't have Stephon Diggs anymore.
Yeah, well, hey, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we'll see.
He doesn't have Stephon Diggs. I think that's one of the big problems.
They're not winning. Hey, Mike, they're not winning 3 games. They're not winning 3 games.
Who? The Vikings?
The Vikings. Yeah. They're not going to be in contention for the first pick in the draft.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. And I don't know that the Jaguars are only going to win 3 games. I thought when you said the Vikings aren't going to win 3 games,
I don't either.
2-14. That's what I thought you meant.
No.
I'm ready to go under 3 wins for the Vikings based on what I've seen so far. Hey, how about this last night?
That's because you're a fan.
No, I'm a realist. We saw for the second time so far this season a player get ejected for contact with an official. And Cam Robinson, I don't know what he was thinking. Well, but here's the thing. He's at the bottom of the pile, and he's trying to get the football. And I thought they ejected him for the first one where you see him push the arm that's kind of draped over the top of his helmet. But then he's got a guy on top of him who's in black and white stripes, and he pushes him away. And that's where he crossed the line. The first one I'd give him. The second one, it's like, okay, I understand why they ejected the guy.
Yeah.
When you see those black and white stripes in your face, you can't start flailing your arms and kicking your feet.
You know what I didn't see in that, though? I mean, and again, I'm not positive what exactly happened, but I would really like to know. I guess we're going to have to do a Zapruder film of that tape. But what I would really like to know is, was he looking? What he saw, did he see the ref? And did he actually push the ref knowing it was the ref? That's what I would like to know.
And, you know, here's the other side of it, too. If they're going to get into the fray like that, there's a certain amount of incidental contact that
jostling,
you have to assume.
Exactly. Yeah.
If there's a group of guys and they're in that scrum and you decide you're going to physically insert yourself into the middle of it, and then you're going to start ejecting guys for contacting you once you've inserted yourself into the middle. See, you've converted me already. Because I thought, hey, the guy's right there. He's on top of him. It's clearly the official. That's the point where you have to stop. but he's in that get off me mode. I mean, God only knows what was going on at the bottom of that pile. God only knows what Dolphins players were grabbing and twisting at the bottom of the pile. We've heard the stories over the years. You get to a point where you just want to get the hell out of there. And, if you're the official and you're going to jump on top of that, then you're assuming the risk of, God forbid, getting your arm shoved away by a player who's trying to escape the pile. Meanwhile, Peter, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick may have raided your closet after the game last night. Do we have the photo of what he had on? I think that is that yours?
Lovely. That's mine. Those are my pants. Those are my pants.